Welcome to this explainer. Look, we've all felt the absolute whiplash of the business cycle. You know, the crazy hiring frenzies, followed by the inevitable, painful belt tightening. But today we're going to bridge the gap between those raw economic indicators hitting your desk every morning and the grand macroeconomic theories that actually explain why our markets pulse the way they do.
Every single business owner is chasing the exact same holy grail, right? Figuring out how to predict the next economic downturn before it totally wipes out their profits. We all obsess over the news, we try to read the tea leaves, but anticipating a real crash requires knowing exactly which vital signs to check, and way more importantly, how to actually interpret the disease.
To figure that out, this explainer is going to be your economic medical chart. We'll start by 1, tracking the economy's health. Then we'll dive into 2, the Austrian business cycle. 3, the Keynesian perspective. 4, neoclassical and supply-side models. And 5, innovation and market psychology, before wrapping it all up with 6, navigating the business cycle.
Section 1. Tracking the economy's health. The 10 vital signs for business owners.
Okay, so let's start with the symptoms. JP Morgan actually suggests that every business owner should act as their own economist by monitoring these 10 specific vital signs. They range from massive aggregates like gross domestic product, the unemployment rate, and the consumer price index, all the way down to localized, market-specific signals like consumer spending, interest rates, business confidence, stock market performance, trade balance, the housing market, and public policy. Think about it. Metrics like consumer spending literally tell you where your current demand is at, while interest rates are going to dictate exactly what it costs to fund your next big expansion.
Now, what's really fascinating here is how we can split these tools into 2 totally different camps, the crystal ball and the rearview mirror. Leading indicators, things like interest rates, the stock market, the housing market, and business confidence, those are your crystal ball. They actually forecast where the economy is heading next. On the flip side, lagging indicators, like the unemployment rate, the CPI, or the trade balance, that's your rearview mirror. They really only reflect historical performance, confirming the inflation or the job losses way after the damage is already done.
Section 2. The Austrian business cycle. The danger of artificial booms.
So why do all these indicators bounce around so wildly in the first place? Well, that brings us to our first diagnosis. The Austrian school, heavily influenced by guys like Mises and Hayek, looks at it through this really clear dichotomy. They pit sustainable, genuine growth, which is a savings-induced boom triggered when households actually increase their savings and naturally lower interest rates, against a credit-induced boom. That second one is an unsustainable, artificial kind of growth. It happens when a central bank injects brand new money into the system, forcing interest rates down without a single change in actual real savings by everyday people.
And that perfectly illustrates their absolute core concept, malinvestment. Basically, this is an intertemporal misallocation of resources. Because borrowing is artificially cheap, it tricks businesses into investing in unprofitable, massively long-term projects that the market just doesn't have the real resources to support right now. It's like trying to build a massive skyscraper without making sure you actually have enough steel first. Eventually, that whole illusion shatters. Rates go back up, and all those malinvestments have to be painfully liquidated. In that liquidation phase, yeah, that is exactly what we call a recession.
Section 3. The Keynesian perspective. Demand, deflation, and despair.
Now let's look through a totally different lens. The Keynesians fiercely reject the Austrian idea that markets just smoothly self-correct during a bust. John Maynard Keynes painted this terrifying picture, warning that the equilibrium must take a position in which employment is low enough and the standard of living sufficiently miserable to bring savings to zero. I mean, that is a grim outlook. He saw a deflationary spiral where if we just let the system liquidate like the Austrians want, job losses completely crush consumer spending, which kills business revenue, leading to even more layoffs. It's basically a massive, self-fulfilling cycle of misery.
In the Keynesian view, income determines savings, absolutely not the other way around. So plunging employment isn't some healthy market correction. It is a tragic destruction of human capital and a massive de-skilling of the workforce. Since incomes drive savings, a crash completely vaporizes those savings. Keynes argued that when the private sector is absolutely paralyzed by fear, the government has to step in as the mechanic. They need to run a deficit, intervene, and essentially prime the pump to get that economic engine running again.
Section 4. Neoclassical and supply-side models. Money, expectations, and taxes.
Next up, we have a wave of theories that pushed back really hard against all that Keynesian government intervention. Take Milton Friedman's monetarist view, for instance. He pointed out something wild. It takes anywhere from 6 to 24 months for central bank money supply changes to actually impact nominal income in the economy. So, by the time policymakers finally realize there's a problem and turn on the money spigot, the economy might actually already be healing. That delayed cash then acts like literal gasoline on a fire, triggering massive inflation. His solution? Just lock in a strict predictable growth in the money supply and basically throw away the keys.
The new classical macroeconomics branch takes this even further with a concept called rational expectations. The theory here is that economic agents use all available information and make no systematic errors, meaning people aren't fools. Business owners see these government policies coming from a mile away, and they instantly adapt their prices and wages. Because of this, markets can clear instantly, unless they get confused by sudden, unexpected shocks. So any prolonged recession is really just temporary confusion, entrepreneurs mistakenly thinking general inflation is an actual spike in demand for their specific product.
This idea is perfectly captured by something called the Lucas critique. It warns policymakers that the whole structure of economic models changes the moment policy changes. You literally cannot predict how a new tax or regulation will work based on historical data. Why? Because humans are smart. The moment you change the rules of the game, people will completely adapt their optimal decision rules to the new environment and outmaneuver the policy.
Meanwhile, we have supply-side economics, popularized in the 1980s. This focuses heavily on cutting taxes and slashing regulations to boost pure production. Relying on the old classical belief that supply ultimately creates its own demand, supply-siders argue that instead of artificially pumping up consumer demand, you just make it highly profitable for businesses to produce. That raw production naturally creates jobs and wealth, effectively generating its own demand.
Section 5. Innovation and Market Psychology. The Pioneers and the Imitators.
But what if this whole business cycle isn't just a mechanical output of money supplies, interest rates, or tax codes? What if it's actually driven by the messy, highly emotional human elements of invention? Joseph Schumpeter saw this cycle as a micro-narrative of innovation in 4 distinct steps. Step 1. A pioneer innovates and disrupts the market. Step 2. They earn massive, temporary monopoly profits. Think of the early days of the smartphone. This sparks a huge economic boom. But then, step 3, imitators see the money and absolutely flood the market. Finally, step 4, margins are fiercely competed away, those profits vanish, and the boom flatlines into a new equilibrium, just waiting around for the next pioneer.
And economists like Pigou and Keynes added that these structural cycles are wildly amplified by our own psychology. It's called psychological amplification. When early profits roll in, it leads to this irrational optimism, which totally accelerates the boom. We all suffer from euphoric contagion, thinking the party's never going to end, so we overborrow. But when the inevitable disappointing realities finally hit, it triggers extreme pessimism. We completely panic, lock our wallets tighter than mathematically necessary, and that deepens the crash way, way beyond what it had to be.
Section 6. Navigating the business cycle. Putting theory into practice.
All right, so we've covered a vast amount of ground in this explainer today, moving from raw metrics all the way to sophisticated theoretical models. How on earth do we put all these diverse academic theories back into the hands of a practical business owner? Well, think of it exactly like this. The economy is the terrain. Your leading and lagging indicators, those are your compass readings telling you where you stand right now. But these macroeconomic theories, they are your map, helping you understand the terrain you're about to cross. Your compass might clearly show you that interest rates are dropping, but you absolutely need your theoretical map to figure out if you're looking at a sustainable savings boom or a massive credit bubble that's just waiting to pop.
Which leaves us with one final, incredibly critical question as you sit down to check your own company's vital signs today. If every economic lens shows a totally different cause for the cycle, which map are you going to use to navigate your next business decision? Are you currently suffering from malinvestment? Do you just need a massive jolt of demand? Or are you simply holding your breath waiting for the next pioneer to disrupt everything? Understanding exactly why your indicators are moving is your ultimate competitive advantage. So what do tomorrow's headlines look like through these lenses?